Okay, so what if one of history's greatest masters was actually, ashamed of his own profession?
It sounds completely backwards to us now, doesn't it?
It really does. For decades, this guy, Diego Velázquez, fought this grueling legal battle. He called 140 witnesses just to swear that he wasn't some craftsman working for money.
But that he was a noble gentleman, a hidalgo, who only picked up a brush for the king's pleasure.
Today we're going to look past all that stiff Spanish court etiquette to find the real Velázquez. Velázquez the philosopher, a revolutionary who was basically painting like an impressionist 2 centuries before Monet.
And we'll uncover how he hid this daring challenge to the gods inside a painting of a simple workshop, all to prove that human skill could rival divine creation.
This is the story of the painter of truth and his secret, lifelong struggle for status. But to really get a feel for the power of his truth, we actually need to jump forward in time, way forward.
We're going to London, 1914, March 10th, the National Gallery.
Imagine it. A rainy Tuesday, it's quiet, respectful, and then a suffragette named Mary Richardson walks in.
And she's hiding a meat chopper in her sleeve.
A meat chopper. She walks up to the ropey Venus Velázquez's only surviving nude, and she just starts hacking at it.
7 times. Slashing the back of this woman on the canvas before anyone can even react.
It's an unbelievably violent act.
Yeah.
But it's what she said afterwards that really gets to the heart of this.
She didn't say she hated the painting or the technique. She said she couldn't stand the way men looked at it. For her, the painting was a rival. It was, her words. Too true.
Too true. That phase is everything. To her, that wasn't just paint on a canvas.
No, it was a living thing. It was real. And that is the paradox we're digging into. Velázquez had this incredible power to capture reality so perfectly it could provoke violence centuries later, yet he spent his whole life trying to run away from the label of painter.
So let's go back. Let's find out where this superpower came from. We're in Seville, 1599.
It's this huge, chaotic port city, the gateway to the Americas. Gold is pouring in, but the streets are, dusty and raw and full of life. Velázquez apprentices there with a man named Francisco Pacheco.
And from what I've read, Pacheco is basically the anti-Velázquez.
In so many ways, yes. Pacheco was a big deal, an intellectual, but he was also the official art censor for the Spanish Inquisition.
So his job was to police art.
Exactly. He was obsessed with rules. If you painted a saint, they had to look perfect, divine, the whole deal. He was always looking up to the heavens for his inspiration.
And his student, Velázquez.
He looks down, he looks at the kitchen floor, he ignores the angels completely and starts painting these things called bodegones.
Kitchen scenes.
Literally, yeah, tavern or pantry scenes. In the art world back then, this was the absolute bottom rung of the ladder. History painting was at the top, pictures of people cooking, that was considered low art.
But when you look at something like Old Woman Frying Eggs, he painted that when he was just a teenager. It doesn't look like low art.
It looks like a manifesto, is what it looks like.
The detail is insane. You can see the egg whites just starting to turn opaque in the hot oil. You can almost hear it sizzling.
Or in the water cellar of Seville, you have to look at the big clay jug in the front.
The condensation.
Yes, the water beating on the side.
Yeah.
You can feel how cold and rough that clay is just by looking at it.
You know exactly what it feels like.
And that condensation, that's a statement. Pacheco wanted to idealize things, make them cleaner, holier. Velázquez was saying, no, the truth is in the grime. It's in the wrinkles on an old man's face. It's in the texture of a cheap pot.
It has a bit of a Caravaggio feel with the dramatic light, but it seems less theatrical.
Caravaggio is all drama. Velázquez is objective. He paints a street seller with the same seriousness he'd later use for a king. He finds the divine right there in the mundane, and that objective eye is what gets him noticed.
And gets him plucked out of Seville and dropped right into the royal palace in Madrid, 1623.
He becomes court painter to King Philip IV, and this is where the whole story changes. Philip was the ruler of this massive global empire, but he was also a pretty melancholy guy. He and Velázquez formed this incredible bond.
I read the king had his own key to Velázquez's studio.
He did. And a specific chair. He would just come in and sit for hours every day just watching Velázquez paint.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
For anyone else, it would be. But Philip, I think he craved that honesty. You have to remember the famous Habsburg face, the Habsburg jaw.
That signature jutting lower jaw?
Yeah, and the heavy eyelids, the thick lip. It was from generations of inbreeding. Most painters would, soften it. They'd use a filter.
But not Velázquez.
Velázquez painted the jaw. He painted the pale skin, the weary look of a man totally exhausted by his own power. And the king loved it. He famously said, "Nobody else is allowed to paint me."
It's like he was relieved someone finally saw the man, not just the crown.
Precisely. But even with the king's favor, Velázquez felt a bit trapped. Spanish art was very isolated. Then, in 1628, a total rock star arrives in Madrid.
Peter Paul Rubens.
The celebrity of the art world. A diplomat, a scholar, a genius. Rubens is all about drama and muscle and swirling color. He sees Velázquez's work and basically says, "You're amazing, but you're provincial. You need to go to Italy."
So he packs his bags. And this trip to Italy is where he supposedly invents Impressionism, which, that's a massive claim. Monet is still 240 years away.
It is a massive claim, but the evidence is right there on the canvas. When he's in Rome at the Villa Medici, he decides to paint the garden, but not as a formal study. He goes outside and plein air.
Painting outdoors, which nobody was doing for finished works then.
Nobody. And if you look at those little paintings, he's not really painting objects anymore. He's painting light. The brush strokes are so loose. Up close, it's just patches of color. He's not painting the individual bricks on the wall.
He's painting the sunlight hitting the wall.
Exactly. He realized the eye doesn't see hard outlines, it sees atmosphere. He dissolves the architecture into light. He's literally painting an impression of the scene. It's mind-blowing.
He's basically seeing the world like Monet, but 2 centuries early in a garden in Rome.
And he brings that new way of seeing back to his big paintings. Look at the Forge of Vulcan, which he painted in Italy.
Right, the myth. Apollo bursts in to tell Vulcan that his wife, Venus, is cheating on him.
High drama, an immortal soap opera. Rubens would have painted it with thunderbolts and divine rage. Velázquez, he paints it like a workplace comedy.
Vulcan looks like just some guy.
He looks like a sweaty, kind of scrawny blacksmith in a messy workshop. And when Apollo delivers this hot gossip, Vulcan just looks stunned. His mouth is hanging open. The other guys in the shop are all gaping.
It's a total sitcom moment, like, wait, she did what?
It is. He drags the gods right down to earth and makes them human and awkward. That's his genius. He refuses to buy the fantasy. Everything has to be grounded in a believable psychological reality.
Okay, so we have a revolutionary artist, the king's best friend. But let's get back to that central conflict. Why was this man so deeply ashamed of being a painter?
You just have to understand the rigid social system of 17th century Spain. Society was obsessed with nobility of blood, and the biggest thing that could disqualify you from being a noble was manual labor.
What they called a mechanical art.
Exactly. If you worked with your hands, and this is the key part, you sold that work for money, you were a tradesman. No different from a shoemaker. It didn't matter if you were a genius.
And Velázquez wanted to be a knight.
He wanted the Cross of the Order of Santiago, the highest honor in Spain. But to get it, you had to prove you'd never, ever worked for a living.
Which leads to this absurd legal battle.
A decade of investigations. He had to call 140 witnesses to testify for him.
And what did they have to say?
They had to swear under oath to a lie. They had to say, "I have never seen Diego Velázquez sell a painting. He only does it for his own pleasure and to serve His Majesty the King."
That's just humiliating. He has to publicly deny the very thing that makes him great just to get some social status.
It's the ultimate irony. His art made him immortal, but in his own life, it was the one thing holding him back. He had to argue that painting wasn't a craft, it was a liberal art, an intellectual pursuit.
This whole struggle seems to fuel his second trip to Italy in 1649. And this is where he travels with his assistant, Juan de Pareira.
Juan de Pareira is such a key figure. He was an enslaved man owned by Velázquez, but he was also a very talented painter himself.
And Velázquez paints his portrait.
He does. He paints it as a sort of warm-up before he takes on the Pope. And the result is just staggering.
Yeah.
When he showed that portrait in Rome, people were floored. One critic wrote that all the other art looked like painting, but this alone looked like truth.
He paints an enslaved man with such incredible power and dignity.
Absolutely. And it's important to note that shortly after this, Velázquez did sign papers to free him. But think about it. He used the portrait of his slave to prove his own mastery to the Roman elite. And it worked. It got him an audience with the Pope.
Pope Innocent X, who was supposedly a very scary subject.
A famously shrewd and suspicious man, and Velázquez paints him. Well, he paints him exactly like that. He's in shimmering red silk, but he doesn't look holy. He looks like a CEO about to fire you.
And it looks like he's judging you, sizing you up.
He is. He's clutching a piece of paper, looking at you out of the corner of his eye. When the Pope saw it, he didn't say, "It's beautiful." He just said, "Troppo vero." Too true.
He recognized his own suspicious nature right there on the canvas.
But did you ever notice the piece of paper he's holding?
What about it?
It has a signature on it. Diego Velázquez, painter to the king. It's such a power move. He literally places his own name, his identity, in the hands of the most powerful man on earth.
He's saying, I am the one who captured you.
Exactly. So he goes back to Madrid, a hero, but he's still not a knight. The legal fight just drags on. So in the 1650s, he decides to make his argument on canvas. He paints the spinners.
Which at first glance just looks like a painting of a tapestry factory.
Yeah.
It seems like a strange choice for a guy trying to prove he's not a manual laborer.
No, it seems totally counterintuitive, right? Look at me, I'm not a worker, and here's a painting of workers. But the whole thing is a visual trap. It has 2 layers. In the foreground, it's dark and messy. You have women spinning wool. That represents craft. Manual labor.
Okay, and in the background.
In the background, there's this brightly lit alcove. You see these well-dressed ladies admiring a finished tapestry. That represents art. But the image on the tapestry itself, it's the myth of Arachne.
Arachne. She was the mortal weaver who challenged the goddess Athena to a competition, right?
Yes. She dared to say that human skill could rival divine creation. Velázquez is using that myth to make his case. He's saying, look, the stuff in the foreground, the spinning, the labor, that's just the means to an end. The real art is in the background. The idea, the intellect.
So he's saying, I'm not the spinner, I'm Arachne. My mind is what creates.
It's a theology of painting, a visual argument for why art is noble. And that leads, of course, to his final ultimate statement. The masterpiece, Las Meninas.
The big one, 1656. If the spinners was the argument, this is the mic drop.
It might be the most complex and analyzed painting in all of history.
Let's just set the scene for anyone who can't picture it. We're in a huge dark room in the palace. In the center is the little princess, the Infanta Margarita, with her maids of honor, her dwarfs, a dog. Over on the left, standing at a gigantic canvas, is Velázquez himself.
Brush in hand, he has painted himself into the royal portrait. That alone is incredibly audacious. But the real trick, the thing that just breaks your brain, is the mirror on the back wall.
That little blurry rectangle in the background.
Yes, and reflected in that mirror, we see King Philip IV and Queen Mariana.
Okay, wait, so if the king and queen are in a mirror on the back wall facing us, that means they have to be standing where?
They have to be standing outside the painting. They are standing exactly where you, the viewer, are standing right now.
So when Velázquez is looking out from the canvas, he's looking at them, at the king and queen.
And by extension, he's looking at us. He completely flips the whole power dynamic. The king isn't the subject. The king is just a reflection, a ghost in a mirror. The solid, real, creative force in the room is the artist.
The artist is the creator of the world. The king is just an observer.
It's his ultimate declaration. Art is more real, more permanent than royalty.
But there's one last detail on that painting that just perfectly ties up his entire life story.
Right.
The red cross on his chest.
The Cross of Santiago? He's wearing it on his black doublet in the painting.
But wait a minute. He painted this in 1656. You said he didn't officially become a knight until 1659.
Correct. When he painted this masterpiece, he was still technically just a worker. He died in 1660, only a year after finally getting the title. But the legend, and it's a beautiful legend, is that the cross wasn't there originally.
It was added later.
The story goes that after Velázquez died, the king was heartbroken. He had the painting brought to him, and Philip himself took a brush and painted the red cross onto his friend's chest.
Wow, finally giving him the honor and death that he fought his whole life for.
It's the ultimate acknowledgement. The king himself confirmed that his friend was noble, not because of his bloodline, but because of his brush.
What an incredible end to that struggle. So let's pull back. We started with a woman attacking a painting because it was too true. We end with a king adding to one. What does it all mean?
It all comes back to his idea of truth. Velázquez wasn't just painting what things looked like, he painted what they felt like. He knew truth wasn't in perfect lines, it was in the air between things. It's the tired eyes of a king, it's the condensation on a jug.
You sure that the divine isn't just up in the heavens. You can find it in a kitchen or a dusty palace room.
And he proved, maybe more than anyone, that the person holding the brush is just as important as the person on the throne. He won the battle for the nobility of the artist.
He absolutely won. And here's something for you listening to do. Go online right now, find a high-resolution image of Las Meninas, and just zoom in. Zoom way in on the Infanta's sleeve or her hand.
Up close, it's just a mess of paint. It looks like abstract art.
Right, it's just blobs and smears. But then you zoom back out, and it snaps into this perfect shimmering illusion of silk and skin. That's the magic. It's a whole philosophy of how we see.
And a final thought for you to chew on. Go back to the Rokeby Venus, the painting that was attacked. Venus is looking into a mirror held up by Cupid. We just assume she's looking at her own reflection.
But if you actually trace the angles,
The geometry doesn't work. The angle is all wrong. She's not looking at herself. She's looking past her reflection, out at us.
looking at us, looking at her.
400 years later, and Velázquez is still playing games with our heads, always watching.
If you enjoyed unraveling that with us, make sure to subscribe and like the show so you don't miss our next conversation. Thanks for listening.